"I haven't felt a man's touch in months," the giant Apache told the rancher. "Before we begin, comment your country so I know where the story is reaching." The wind rolled low across the valley that morning, warm and dusty, carrying the scent of mesquite and the faint sound of creek water tapping against stone. Dawn had barely broken, yet the sky glowed with that soft, reddish haze that made the frontier look endless. The kind of sunrise that usually comforted Ward Kellen, the quiet rancher who kept himself on a stretch of land so forgotten even the map-makers left it bare. But that morning, something was different. The stillness felt interrupted. Not broken, just disturbed, like the land was holding its breath. Ward stepped out onto his porch with a tin cup of coffee warming his palms. The boards under his boots creaked softly. A camera would have caught the weary set of his shoulders, the slow blink of a man who hadn't slept well in years. He stared across the pasture, expecting nothing but cattle misting in the early light. Instead, he saw movement near the old storehouse. Not fast, not sneaky, just deliberate. Ward froze, cup halfway to his mouth. The sun pushed higher, dust lifting in a thin veil, and through that haze stepped the tallest woman he had ever seen in his life. Broad shoulders, long black hair braided tight, leather clothing worn, but carefully kept. The early light carved a rim of gold around her figure, turning her into a silhouette rising straight out of the earth. She didn't look like someone passing through. She looked like someone who moved with purpose. Ward put the cup down slowly. A few heartbeats passed. Then she noticed him. Her gaze lifted. Calm, level, unhurried. It was the kind of look that could quiet a room or silence a threat without a single word. But Ward didn't feel threatened. There was something else in her eyes, fatigue, maybe, or hunger, or a kind of loneliness that matched his own. She didn't run, didn't hide. She just stood there beside his storehouse, hands resting near the straps of a travel-worn bag slung across her chest. Behind her, the cottonwoods shifted gently, their leaves whispering in the warming breeze. Ward stepped off the porch, the morning dust rolling around his boots. "You lost?" he asked, voice steady low. The woman's lips curved, barely. Not quite a smile, just an acknowledgement. "No, just hungry." Her English was accented, but clear. She didn't blink as she spoke, didn't waver. The candid honesty caught Ward off guard more than anything else. People usually hid their needs out here, wrapped them up in lies or bravado. But this woman carried hers openly. "I've got food," Ward said, "if you're willing to sit a minute." Her eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but in study. She was measuring him, considering the truth of his offer, weighing silence against survival. A long pause stretched between them, filled with the rustle of morning grass and the slow creak of the pasture gate shifting in the breeze. At last, she stepped closer. As she approached, Ward realized just how tall she truly was. She stood nearly shoulder-to-door frame height, her presence filling the space like a shadow cast by a mountain. Up close, the fine lines of exhaustion were clearer. Beneath her eyes, along the edges of her mouth, the kind of lines formed not by age, but by carrying too many heavy miles alone. Ward opened the door of the house for her. The light inside was soft, warmed by the glow of a low-burning oil lamp. She hesitated at the threshold, the strap of her bag tightening slightly under her grip. "You don't trust easily," Ward said quietly. She met his gaze again, unflinching. "No one should." He nodded once, stepped back, gave her space. Only then did she enter. Inside, she sat at a small wooden table, while Ward set bread, dried fruit, and a kettle of warm water before her. She studied the food for a moment, not like someone seeing a meal for the first time, but like someone remembering what it meant to be given something without expecting a debt attached. As she ate, Ward leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You been traveling long?" he asked. Her jaw moved slowly as she chewed. Then she swallowed, wiped her mouth with the back of her wrist, and said, "Too long." Her tone held no drama, no attempt to spark sympathy, just a simple truth carried with the weight of every mile she'd walked. Ward nodded again. Silence filled the room, steady and natural. Only the faint crackle of the stove and the quiet shift of her chair broke it now and again. After a few minutes, She pushed her empty plate back, placed both hands on the table, and looked at him fully. "My name is Alona," she said. The name felt strong, rooted. It suited her. "Ward," he replied. She gave a small nod. Another pause. Then, with the same blunt honesty she'd used earlier, she added, "I haven't felt a man's touch in months." Ward's breath caught, not because of the words alone, but because of how she spoke them. Straightforward. Not coy, not suggestive, not looking for anything. Just telling the truth of her loneliness. The weight of confession settled over the table, like dust on a quiet afternoon. Ward didn't move, didn't reach, didn't react the way men often did when faced with something they didn't understand. Instead, he studied her expression, the tension around her eyes, the way she folded her hands to keep them steady, the small, almost hidden tremble in her breath. She wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't offering anything. She was revealing something human. Ward exhaled slowly. "You must have been alone out there," he said. Her eyes dropped for the first time, not in shame, but in release. "It changes a person," she murmured. "Being without softness for so long. You begin to forget what it feels like." Ward stepped forward, pulled out the chair across from her, and sat down, though it creaked gently. "I know the feeling," he said. "You spend enough nights here, with nothing but cattle moaning in the dark, and you start wondering if you're meant to be alone." She lifted her gaze. The oil lamp painted soft gold across her cheekbones, catching the faintest glimmer of vulnerability, the kind that's painful but necessary. "Why are you alone?" she asked. Ward gave a small, careful shrug. "People left. Time didn't stop." Alona breathed out, almost a sigh. She rested her fingertips against the rim of the tin cup, rolling it slowly back and forth. "Sometimes," she said, "the world pushes you away before you even know you're walking alone." Another pause, another quiet moment, another truth shared without force. Ward leaned slightly closer, not enough to intrude, but enough to show he was listening. "You want to tell me what brought you this far?" he asked. She looked toward the window. The light had shifted now, warmer and higher. Her face softened as she watched the breeze nudge the tall grass outside. "I needed a place," she said. "A place where no one asked me to return. A place where no one claims to own my steps." Ward's heartbeat quickened slightly. Not from fear, from understanding. "You found one," he said. Alona's shoulders relaxed, just a little. Her expression eased, and for the first time, a faint smile ghosted across her lips. "I don't know how long I'll stay," she whispered. "You can leave when you choose," Ward replied. "Or stay if you want." Her eyes met his once more, steady and deep. "We will see," she said. The moment lingered between them, gentle, warm, unhurried. The kind of moment the frontier rarely offered. Outside, the sunlight stretched across the porch, dust drifting lazily in the breeze, as if time itself had slowed. Inside, two lonely souls sat across from each other for the first time, sharing a table, sharing breath, sharing silence. Something had begun, something neither of them had expected, something neither of them fully understood yet, and the day had barely started. The day stretched slow and quiet after that first meeting, the kind of quiet that usually comforted Ward. But now it felt different, alive, somehow, as if the land itself sensed he wasn't alone anymore. Alona stayed by the table a while longer, finishing the last of the warm water. Ward noticed how carefully she moved, measured steps, controlled breath. She was a woman who never let her guard fall completely, not even in rest. Every motion carried intention, like she'd spent years learning to survive by watching the world before letting it watch her. Ward cleaned the plates, giving her space. He didn't ask questions. He sensed she'd speak when she felt safe, not a breath sooner. When she finally rose, the chair leg scraped softly against the wood. She rested a hand on the back of it, grounding herself. "Your home is quiet," she said. Ward nodded. "It's been that way a long time." She studied him, the kind of study that made a man feel seen in ways he hadn't expected. Then she walked toward the open door, stepped outside, and stood on the porch. The sun had climbed higher, painting the valley in pale gold. Grass moved in waves. birds crossed the sky in slow arcs. For a moment, she simply breathed, shoulders rising and falling with a kind of relief Ward hadn't expected, as if quiet was rare for her. Ward joined her, leaning against one of the porch posts. "You can stay as long as you need," he said softly. "I don't know what I need." Her voice carried something fragile, something honest. "You'll figure it out here," Ward said. "The land has a way of telling you things you've been ignoring." She didn't turn, but he saw her jaw flex slightly, absorbing the words. After a long silence, she spoke again. "Are there people nearby?" "Neighbors." "Not for miles." "It's just me." "That is good," she murmured. Ward felt that answer settle through him like a warm draft. Good, not because of danger, but because solitude was something she trusted. He didn't push further. He simply stepped down into the yard, letting the moment breathe. "You want to walk a bit?" he asked. "Stretch your legs." Alona hesitated, then nodded once. They crossed the field in quiet strides. Ward kept a respectful distance, sensing she wasn't used to proximity. She took in everything: the fences, the barn, the water troughs, every detail. Nothing escaped her. They reached the creek at the edge of the property. Water slid over smooth stones, sunlight bending around every ripple. Alona crouched near the bank, scooping a handful and letting it fall through her fingers. "This place has not been touched by trouble," she said. Ward sat on a flat rock nearby. "It tries to stay away from me. Or maybe I just don't give it much company." She dipped her hand in again, watching the water run off her palm. "Where I came from," she said quietly, "trouble comes whether you invite it or not." Ward felt his breath ease in his chest. She was opening a door, not wide, not all the way, but a door nonetheless. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to," he said. Her fingers tightened slightly around a small river stone. "If I say nothing, the past grows heavier." He nodded. "Say only what's light enough to carry." The slightest smile ghosted across her lips. She placed the stone back in the water. "I walked away from my people," she said. "Not out of anger. Out of survival." Ward stayed still, giving her room. "I was expected to live a life I did not choose, one where my steps were decided by others. I woke one morning and felt the world shrinking around me, felt my breath shorten, felt myself disappearing." She touched her chest lightly, as if remembering the tightness. "So I left." Ward let the words settle before speaking. "You're not disappearing here." Alona looked at him, not with surprise, but with a kind of searching intensity. "You speak like a man who has lived in emptiness," she said. Ward exhaled through his nose. "Maybe I have." She studied him again, her gaze softening. "What took your people away?" she asked. Ward leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Death took some. Distance took others. Time took the rest." Alona didn't look away. "You have known loneliness as long as I have. Then—" Ward nodded once. "That is why you understand so quickly," she said. The breeze shifted, carrying the faint smell of sage. Alona closed her eyes briefly, letting it wash over her. When she opened them again, some of the hardness had slipped from her expression, revealing a steadier warmth beneath. Ward stood and offered his hand, not to pull her up forcibly, but to let her choose. She looked at his hand for a long moment before placing hers in it. Her grip was firm, warm, grounding. He helped her to her feet, and when she rose, their height difference drew them closer than either had planned. Not touching, but close enough that the air between them felt charged. Neither stepped back immediately. Alona was the first to break the silence. "You are kind," she said. "Kindness can be dangerous." "For who?" Ward asked quietly. "For both." He didn't argue. There was truth in that. Truth she carried like a scar. They walked back toward the ranch in steady silence. At the porch steps, Alona paused. "I need to know something," she said. "What's that?" "Do you expect anything from me for being here?" Ward shook his head gently. "No, you don't owe me a thing. Not food, not work, not a place in my life. Just feel safe while you're under my roof. That's all." Her shoulders eased slightly, as if she'd been bracing for an answer she didn't want to hear. Most men expect, she said. They give so they can take. Well, Ward replied softly, I'm not most men. She held his gaze again. Longer this time. There was a searching look in her eyes. Something like measuring trust, weighing the possibility of allowing herself to rest. Finally, she stepped past him into the house. By midday, the heat had risen, and Alona tied her hair back. Stepping outside again, Ward found her near the corral, watching his cattle graze lazily in the sun. They look peaceful, she said. They've had a good life here. They follow your calm. Ward chuckled. They're stubborn, not holy. Alona touched the fence rail lightly. Animals always know the truth of a person. Ward moved to stand beside her. What truth do they know about you? She took her time answering. That I am tired, she said softly. More tired than I have allowed myself to feel. Ward let the quiet settle again. Nearby, a calf nuzzled its mother, the soft thud of hooves against dirt breaking the stillness now and then. Alona rested her elbows on the fence, looking out across the pasture. I have walked so far, she murmured. Every mile carried fear or memory, but none of it felt safe enough to stop. And here? Ward asked. She lowered her head slightly. Here feels different. That simple confession struck him harder than anything else that day. The afternoon drifted into early evening. Ward chopped behind the barn, while Alona helped steady the stack. She didn't speak much, but she didn't need to. Her presence alone changed the space around him. Softened edges, filled silences, steady breath. By the time the sun dipped low, streaking the land with deep oranges and fading light, she stood near the porch stairs, her eyes tracing the horizon. Something on your mind? Ward asked. Yes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I do not know how to stop running. Ward stepped beside her, watching the sun sink behind the distant ridge. You don't have to stop all at once, he said. Just let today be quiet. Let tomorrow be quieter. She breathed in deeply. Quiet is hard for me. It used to be hard for me, too, Ward replied. Until it wasn't. She turned toward him slightly. In the soft glow of dusk, her face looked gentler, the edges eased by the fading light. I do not know how long I will stay, she said again. Stay as long as feels right, Ward answered. Leaving is easy. Healing takes time. Her eyes softened. You speak like a man who has waited his whole life for someone to listen, she whispered. Ward's breath hitched. Maybe I have. Alona stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that he felt the warmth of her presence. Then I will listen, she said, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she looked peaceful, truly, quietly peaceful, bathed in the last rays of the dying sun on a land that had finally stopped moving beneath her feet. Night crept slowly onto the valley, settling over the ranch like a soft blanket. The sky darkened from gold to violet, then into a deep blue pinned with early stars. A lantern glowed on Ward's porch, casting warm light across the wooden boards. Inside, the house felt fuller than it had in years, not crowded, not loud, just lived in, as if the presence of another heartbeat had pushed the silence into gentler corners. Alona stood by the window, watching the darkness gather, her reflection blurred in the glass, faint, almost hesitant, like a spirit deciding whether it belonged in the world it was looking at. Ward watched her from the table, his hands wrapped around a mug of warm tea he hadn't touched. You can rest here, he said quietly. She didn't turn at first. Her breath left her in a slow rise and fall, steady but burdened. Resting feels dangerous, she murmured. Ward leaned back in his chair. Resting is the first sign you trust a place. She shifted a little, hand coming to rest on the window frame. I have not trusted anything in a long time. Not land, not people, not even myself. Ward stood, crossed the room, and stopped just a few steps behind her, close enough she could feel his presence, far enough she could breathe. You don't have to trust everything at once, he said. Just trust this moment. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. This moment feels unfamiliar. That's how you know it's something new. She finally turned. The lantern light softened the angles of her face, catching the shine in her dark eyes. For the first time since arriving, She looked unguarded. Not weak, just honest. The weight she carried was still there, but she wasn't holding it alone anymore. Ward motioned toward the table. Sit. Eat a little more. Then sleep. Tomorrow the world will look different. She hesitated, but followed him. She sat slowly, folded her hands before her, fingertips brushing lightly against her wrists as if grounding herself. Ward placed bread and a small bowl of warm vegetables in front of her. You treat me as if I am fragile, she said. No, Ward replied. I treat you as someone who deserves gentleness. The word stirred something deep inside her, something she had buried beneath years of walking alone. She ate in silence, each bite thoughtful, like she was remembering how to taste safety again. Afterward, Ward prepared a cot in the spare room. The house had only 2 small bedrooms, but he had used this one for storage for years. Old blankets, tools he didn't need, a few crates of fabric from trading posts long forgotten. He moved quietly, stacking things aside, clearing space. Alona stood in the doorway, watching him. You do not have to make room for me, she said. He glanced up. There's been room for a long time. I just never had a reason to use it. Her eyes softened. She stepped inside, running her hand along the wood of the bed frame. This place feels like memory. It is, Ward said, memories of people who left. Memories I'd stopped touching. And now there's someone here to make it feel alive again. She lowered her gaze. I do not know how long I will stay. You don't have to know. Just stay tonight. He placed a folded quilt at the foot of the bed. She touched the corner of it gently. This is soft, she whispered. I am not used to soft things. Ward smiled faintly. Get used to it. A faint laugh, not loud, barely audible, escaped her lips. It surprised her more than him. She lifted her eyes, and for a moment warmth flickered between them. She lay down slowly, resting her head against the pillow. Ward stepped back, giving her space, but before he reached the doorway, she spoke again. Ward. He stopped, sit for a moment. He pulled a chair close and sat beside the cot. She turned her head on the pillow, her hair spilling across it like shadows. When I said earlier that I had not felt a man's touch in months, she paused, searching for the right words. It was not desire alone. It was about being unseen, unheld, forgotten. Ward nodded. Loneliness doesn't ask permission. It just gets inside you. Her voice softened. Yes. He didn't reach for her. He didn't touch her hand. He just stayed, solid and quiet, letting her feel presence instead of pressure. Ward, she whispered, do you feel forgotten? He inhaled deeply. The truth rose in him like a tide. I did, for years. And now, he looked at her, at the tired strength in her face, the long road she had carried in her bones. Now, he said softly, I don't feel alone. She turned to look at the ceiling, letting that settle. For the first time, her breathing loosened, no longer sharp or controlled. She closed her eyes. Thank you for staying, she murmured. I'm not going anywhere, Ward replied. Within minutes, she drifted into sleep, soft, steady, deeper than any rest she'd known in months. Ward watched quietly, making sure she wasn't startled, wasn't unsettled. Her chest rose and fell with a rhythm that almost matched the gentle creak of the old house. When he finally stepped out, he left the door cracked just enough for a warm light to spill inside. Morning came with a pale blue sky, and a thin veil of mist lifting above the pasture. Ward stepped outside with a cup of coffee, feeling the cool air against his face. The world felt changed, not louder, not busier, just fuller. Alona walked out moments later, wearing her same worn clothing but looking somehow lighter. Sleep had washed some of the sharpness from her features. The lines of exhaustion were still there, but softened. You slept, Ward said. Yes. She stepped onto the porch, stretching her arms slightly. My body remembered how. He smiled. Good. They walked the pasture again, the grass brushing against their boots as the sun slowly climbed. Birds fluttered across the valley. A calf stumbled near its mother, bleating softly. Alona watched it with quiet fondness. I do not know what this place is, she said, but it feels like breathing. Ward nodded. That's what it gave me, too. They reached the fence and leaned against it, shoulder to shoulder, not touching, but close. Alona inhaled the scent of sage rising from the earth. I left everything, she said softly, and I thought leaving meant I had nothing left. You have yourself, Ward replied. That's more than enough. She turned to look at him. And you? I have this land. And now, someone to talk to besides cattle. She laughed again, quieter than before, but real. The moment rested between them, warm and gentle. No rush, no pressure. Just two people finding steadiness in each other's presence. Ward looked at her hands, the strength in them, the quiet tremble that still lingered, the years of wandering etched into her skin. Alona, he said quietly, you don't have to run anymore. Her lashes lowered. You say it like it's simple. It isn't, he replied, but it's possible. She looked out across the valley. Sunlight caught the ridge, warming it until it glowed. I do not know what tomorrow brings, she said. You don't have to decide tomorrow. Just decide today. And today, she asked. Ward drew a slow breath. Today, you can belong here, if you want to. She turned fully toward him now, her figure framed by the endless sky. Belonging is something I have not felt in a long time. Then let this be the first place you feel again. Her eyes softened, her shoulders eased. A warmth moved through her expression, slow but certain. Ward, she said quietly, thank you. For what? For giving me a place to stop. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. The closeness between them already said more than hands could. She looked across the land once more, her breath steady, her gaze clear. I will stay, she said. Not forever. Not promised. Just a day. And that was enough. Ward felt something shift inside him. A weight lifting, a life opening, a quiet hope settling into place. Alona walked back toward the house with him, the morning sun warming the path before them. The world felt ready again, soft again, spacious again, and for the first time in a long time, the ranch felt like a home built for two. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who loves Wild West tales. Your support keeps these stories alive.